Well, good morning, everyone. I believe the 8 o'clock hour has arrived. So thank you for accommodating this early meeting this morning. Ask Chairman Lumsden if he would open us up with a word of prayer.
If you would join me, please. Almighty, most holy Father, faithful through the ages, we come to you this morning. And we thank you for all of your many blessings to us. We thank you for life and health, for family and friends, for watching over us and caring for us. We thank you for the opportunity that you've given to us to be here today. For those of us who are elected that serve here, that you've given us the opportunity to do that on behalf of those that we represent. We pray for your wisdom and your guidance and your direction in everything that we do here this morning. And we ask that you would be honored and glorified in all that we do. For we pray it in Jesus' name and for his sake. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a little bit of housekeeping that since this is our first full committee meeting, without Chairman Reinders, who began our 2-year biennium, the email that went out, I think everybody saw. We were going to continue with business as usual as we finish out this second year. We do have meetings scheduled for next Thursday that we will have a presentation regarding cityhood, essentially, and so there has been some discussions among the committee members along those lines, and anyone that wishes to join in offline regarding that process and the procedure, please get with me. We have 3 bills on the agenda today, and we are going to start with House Bill 781. Representative Lumsden, are you ready, sir? 784. What'd I say? 781. Excuse me, 784. Thank you. Back to you.
Are we on? There we go. All right. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I bring to you House Bill 784. This is a bill that deals with school safety plans and their discussion by local school boards. House Bill 784 does one thing and one thing only. It adds to the list of things that can be excluded from public discussion the matter of school safety plans. Several years ago, the legislature passed a law that protects the plan once it is in place from open records request. However, the discussion by local school boards surrounding the creation or revision of a plan is not currently protected under open meetings statutes. So in short, the plan, once it is created, is protected, but the discussion surrounding its formation is not. House Bill 784 simply amends existing law by adding language in line 45 and 46, and again in lines 83 and 84 that make it clear that school safety plans may be discussed and acted on in executive session by a local school board. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, that's the bill. That's all it does. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
You do have, let's see, at least one question. So
All right.
Who's 17? 17, oh, Representative Shannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Every time
Are you?
Concerning issues relative to that. This is really more is about procedure and process, because when you actually get into the development of the plan, that plan is usually created by a specialist, someone who is specially trained in the development of safety plans, either at the local level or through a third-party vendor. So once that plan is developed and presented, the school board obviously has the responsibility as elected officials to review that and then take action on that. So it does not preclude the public from being able to have input if the board so chooses. They can have public comment.
If I could have a follow-up question? So, but this says in line 83, meetings of local boards of education to discuss, vote upon, review, or assess school safety plans prepared pursuant to code section 20-2-1185. You're saying that parents would have the opportunity to weigh in, but
If the local school board chooses to have that option, they can take comments. This is more about the process once the plan is developed.
if I could finish my question, how would they have a chance to ask questions if they don't hear the conversation? To know what to ask questions about and have comments about?
As I said, the school safety plans are developed by those specially trained to develop the plan. Any comment that they might have relative to a concern that they have, they certainly have the freedom to make that to the school board.
So they'd be making comments on conversation they didn't hear. Is that correct? Is that the effect?
They would have the ability to make comments on things that they have a concern about.
That's it. Yeah. I think he answered it. They're not going to hear the conversation.
We have a few more questions here, so I'm going to. 26?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Lumsden, this in no way encourages or discourages or tries to keep families from having input into the plan. It just basically says that once it's under lock and key, it stays that way, but for the safety of our children. Is that correct?
This is primarily about process. Once the plan is developed, currently, of course, the board has to take action on the plan, but this is at a different level than at the public comment. This is giving them the ability to review the plan, take action on the plan once it is in place.
Okay. And may I have a follow-up?
Sure.
Or a comment if I could? Representative, I understand exactly where you're coming from there. I mean, I'm engaged in my child's education, but I don't see the lesson plans a teacher puts out there. You know, once it's out there and we're looking at the homework in the evening, and I want to engage in that child's activity, I can do that. You know, I think if you have a constituent in your district that has a concern about a safety plan, I mean, I don't know. I know back in my district, I don't know a principal or a school administrator that wouldn't listen to a parent if there was a concern. And so I think that you're right on to question that, but I think the process here is just the fact that once this plan is developed and put into place, it's not going to be out there for everybody and their brother to look at to make sure to keep from some nut job coming out and looking at the plan and trying to circumvent the process. I think this is a well thought out plan that's pretty much a common sense type piece of legislation in my mind, but that's just the way I feel.
Let's see, I believe we had 15.
Okay. Wait, is this? Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to echo some of Representative Shannon's concerns. So, would it be the school board would discuss the school safety plan and then make a decision on what that plan looks like? And once that plan is put into place, it's protected and not subject to open records. So, essentially, throughout the process, there is unless the school board opts into allowing the public, parents, teachers, and other stakeholders to see or be privy to the discussion, there wouldn't be really a sense of some of the issues that might come up that may be controversial or may have unintended consequences that parents and teachers and other advocates might be concerned about. Is that right?
I don't really know how to answer your question because I'm not sure I followed all of it, but the point being, once the plan is developed by a professional and presented to the board for review, the board currently cannot, the way the law is currently read, it would have to be done in a public, or could be done in a public format. But most boards, knowing the sensitivity of what's involved in that, they're not going to do that. So they have to do one-on-one, questions arise. This is more about process and permitting them to be able to engage and exchange ideas and views and ask questions. They are elected officials. They are elected to act on behalf of the people that they represent. So this is, I guess I would ask, I think when they're elected, their people either have confidence in them and their ability to make decisions on their behalf when it gets to that point, which is what we're proposing here, or they don't. So that's pretty much in a nutshell what we're dealing with here. This is about process. This is not about cutting out the public's input, but this is about process, and this is about security for our children.
Mr. Chair, if I may follow up. Last year, we discussed a school safety bill that ended up getting vetoed by the governor because of some of the concerns that advocate groups raised as it pertains to how it would impact children. And one of the examples in the bill was we had a hotline that at one point there was a database that would track information about students, and there was concerns about profiling and information sharing. So if a school were to put into place something like that in a school safety plan, how would the parents and teachers and stakeholders know that was part of the safety plan if they weren't able to hear the public, hear the discussion? How would they know that was part of the safety plan, or even a possibility if the discussion is not open to the public and then the safety plan is protected and confidential after the school board passes it?
Well, to your first point, this was included in part of that package that was vetoed, but I've had conversations with the governor's office, and that was a package. This was one piece that they were not opposed to. This was something that they actually were supportive of. So I think that should address the overall issue about your concern.
Thank you.
21, Chairman Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I read this and I hear the discussion and the concerns that y'all may have with this, I don't think that this would prohibit the school boards from discussing the overall picture of safety. I think it gets into the specifics of the plans themselves. And I think that Representative Lunston had spoke about this, that if they get into the nuts and the bolts and they're deciding where there's going to be certain things in the school for that safety, such as who may be armed, or the resource officers, or where certain cameras may be, or what's locked, what's a permanently locked entrance or egress or to a school. That's the kind of stuff that needs to be kept basically in the purview of the schools themselves without the public knowing. Because in this day and time of the criminal activity, if someone has access to that, or they can fill in the gaps to that, then they'll know where the weak spots are in a school security system. So I think that's what this gets to, and it's the specifics of the plans themselves. Now, if it's the desire of a school board to have these meetings and to let these people know that, that's certainly up to them, but there are certain things in security that need to be kept private. That's the reason that in most of the security, you can't tell. Banks never publicize where their security is. Courthouses don't always do that. So I think this is just the specifics is what they're trying to prohibit, so that people of a criminal intent won't be able to find or to look it up or to hear or see it through public meetings. So this leaves it to the discretion to get into the specifics or not, but certainly not to prohibit any general discussion from the public to ask questions about the overall system, about what you're doing.
Do you have any comment on that? We have two more, and then we're going to cut off the discussion on this one and go ahead and vote. Representative Bernal?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a retired educator, I was looking at this, and I have been on when they've developed plans. And so the question I have is that, and the parents are on the committees, the school committees, if that gives any clarification. The parents are a part of that. when a school plan is developed for an individual school. So with this bill, would it be a combination of, because each school has a plan too. So is it a combination of that, because each school has to send their plan in? So they have to have a community person, a parent on their committee, and then they discuss their plan. So is this,
Changes nothing about that process.
Okay.
This is about the school board's ability to be able to hear the details of the plan and take action on the plan, and do so in a setting where meaningful discussion can take place about things that don't need to be known by the general public.
okay, thank you.
Representative Turner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Lumsden, what's your social security number?
I refuse to answer that question based
kind of
on
the
the
point,
fact
right?
that it, might be prejudicial.
There are certain things, isn't it true? There are certain things that we should keep private, and if we were to share them, would expose us to great harm.
The gentleman knows whereof he speaks.
So isn't this measure trying to keep the secrets of security, which is something we do all the time, everywhere, from military to our national secrets of how we're actually protecting our people so that our enemies do not take advantage of that?
That is indeed the intent.
And my last question here is, can you imagine what would happen if somebody with ill intentions decided to subject this type of information to an open records request and then actually use it against our kids?
Which is why open records requests are not permitted for schools for safety plans.
Thank you. It's a good bill, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Leader Trammell?
I appreciate the gentleman's intent with the legislation, but philosophically, I think what it speaks to is the open meetings law is one of the cornerstone foundations of democracy, and when we attempt to limit sunshine, is something that we should not do lightly. And this bill, by allowing discussion in executive session on a topic that is very front and center in today's education and the protection of children, I think those discussions should be held in public, and it's just a philosophical difference of opinion, and therefore I will not be supporting the bill.
'23, Chairman Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have, as the minority leader mentioned, one of the best open meetings, open records laws in the state, and that's a good thing. However, this legislature has many times in the past, and generally with bipartisan support because it made common sense, and I hope we get a little bipartisan support this time because this makes common sense, we have at times limited that for good reasons. A couple of examples come to mind. Last decade, I can't remember if it was President Bush or President Obama, was coming to Atlanta on a visit. Under our open records law, the Atlanta Police Department would have had to give anybody that wanted the security details of how they intended to protect the president. I remember this because it came through the Judiciary Committee and we passed a bill to limit that specific access. I also remember in relating to children in the past, we had a situation where the recreation departments would have to give out the addresses and locations of all the people on the Little League team. So anybody who wanted to do harm to them knew exactly where they lived, what their phone numbers were, what their parents' numbers were. We limited that also. On line 48 of the bill, it says executive session shall be permitted. In other words, they can shut the doors when they talk about this, but they don't have to. So the idea here is to allow the local school boards, when they're deciding how to protect our children, to not have to tell the bad guys exactly where they're supposed to meet if something bad happens, not where it has been mentioned the security cameras may be or the police officers may be. And if you vote against this bill, you're harming the ability of our school boards to protect our children. This is common sense exceptions that we've done several times to the open meetings, open records law. And it's amazing to me that we're sitting here debating whether or not we should let our school boards close the doors to keep the security plans from the bad guys. And that's all it is. And they don't have to. And I guarantee you, any concerned parent goes up to the average principal, he's going to be happy to consult with them and let them know and ask questions about how they're going to protect their child. But what he's probably not going to let them know is a few details and facts that need to be kept hidden so nobody will know, so that the children will be protected if something bad happens. Mr. Chairman, I would ask the fellow committee members to support this bill because it's common sense and it makes sense. Thank you.
This is lit up pretty good here. So here's what we're going to do. There are 3 flashing thus far for questions. We're going to, I'm going to ask 21, and then I'm going to go back to 17, and then we're going to have 24, and then we're going to take a vote on this. Chairman Powell?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To my friend, the minority leader, I understand your comments about sunshine. And, you know, we have some of the best laws of the nation about openness so that the public can see what our elected folks and appointed boards and such as those in the public good, what they do. So I certainly do agree with you about the idea that sunshine is the greatest sanitizer. But at the same time, and I refer to this because we do not want that same sunshine to be a weapon for the criminal elements. Today, this morning, in Hart County, and I never thought I'd live to see this day. Yesterday, there was gang violence in the general vicinity of one of our elementary schools. Gang members from South Carolina came over, murdered some people there in Hart County, and got out and ran, basically, and has been on the run. They canceled the classes at South Hart Elementary, where one of my 10-year-old grandsons goes to school this morning, under the security that he had not been apprehended. He was just apprehended about 30 minutes ago after the school was supposed to come in. But those plans do not need to, the specifics of the security plans of the various schools do not need to be made public, because this could only aid in the criminal elements if they wish to use these elementary schools, high schools, middle schools, or whatever schools. So this doesn't prohibit general discussion that any school board might wish. It just basically protects from the specifics of security from being made public.
17.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're talking about what's going on currently in the country, and one of the things that's going on currently in the country is that we know that black and brown students are disproportionately disciplined and expelled from schools. And a lot of that has to do with how schools are conducting safety and how schools are moving in their policies and procedures. And so I think this bill is an example of how something can look perfectly okay to you can look not okay to someone in a diverse community, myself, for example. So I think that where we are just kind of reducing this down to this is about the details are not something that the public needs to be involved in. Absolutely they do, and I think that black and brown parents would agree they need to be involved in knowing the details. I think everybody understands the risk of, everybody understands not wanting the people who do harm to have more information and making sure that they don't have information, but I think it also has to be a balance with making sure that bills like this don't have unintended consequences, and I absolutely think that they would. SB 15 was a great example of that. There were things that stuck out in that bill, as you mentioned before, that the governor did not take issue with, that black and brown parents, and I know because I heard from them, took issue with. So again, whether something is good or bad depends on the person who's viewing it.
24. Representative Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I always object to an argument an argument made in good faith, but an argument that if you vote no, you're not for the safety of children. I object to that. I specifically feel that the issue of determining whether every member of the school staff should be allowed to carry a gun into their classroom is too important a decision not to be a public decision made by the school board. So my vote is really on that one singular issue that I think is way too important of public impact to decide whether every teacher shall be permitted or shall be authorized or shall be directed to carry a gun into the classroom.
Chairman Lumpson, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to wrap that up.
Everyone's entitled to their opinion. I am a fact-based person who has dealt with public safety for my entire career. This is a simple measure about a process and a procedure within our school board. Nothing else. You are entitled to read into it as you please, but this is a very simple, limited bill. I see no way for unintended consequences. This is simply a bill about process and procedure within the school board relative to how they deal with public safety, safety plans for the schools. That is all the bill does, and I'll leave this to your own individual choice as to how you choose to view it.
Chairman, if I recall from yesterday, we did have testimony in support of this from...
I have had conversations with the Department of Education, particularly Gary McGibney, who is the chief officer that oversees school safety plans. But more importantly, I've had extensive conversation with the legal counsel for the state school boards, and their major complaint has been that we've had to do the workaround thing as opposed to being able to discuss it in an executive session. So that is where the background for this comes from.
You want to recognize Chairman Powell for a motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion that this committee pass forward House Bill 784 with a due pass recommendation.
We have a motion due pass. We have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. All right, once again, I'm going to ask for a hand vote. All those in favor, please signify by stating aye. By raising their right hand. And those opposed? 6. I have a count of 9 to 6. Bill passes on to rules. Next, we're going to call up House Bill 34. Representative Brunau. This, for everybody, if you're not already aware, this is a measure that passed out of this committee on into rules last year. There have been no changes to the bill, and we have had not had any objections. So, Representative Brunau, if you don't mind presenting the bill, and we can try to go ahead and take action on that today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What House Bill 34 does is that it will allow businesses, if a business owner pays ad valorem taxes on real estate or property within the county or municipal corporation for which the authority is created, then they can be a part of the Development Authority Board in that county. And that's basically what it does. It just allows for businesses and residents who are owners to be a part of the boards.
Do we have any questions of the author? Is it also, Representative Brunau, as it allows for the removal if you do not have
Yes,
necessarily a a proper acting member per se, rather than just a non-reappointment?
Yes, it does. It does. On lines 18, 19, and 20, it talks about when a person could be removed from that such board.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. 12, Chairman Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. If you have a local authority, a group that is got their own agency set up locally, is this going to apply to all across the state? Their charters may be already in place. Is this going to supersede existing charters?
I'm not sure about that question.
Is the question that you're asking, is this just for new
Yes. And
development authorities that are organized, or is this also?
I already have one in my community, and this is not the way it's worded. Is this going to supersede my existing authorities?
Yes,
charter?
it will. It will.
Thank you.
23.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm trying to remember back, Representative, last year during our discussion on this bill, I know that there was testimony because it was in subcommittee and we went through it. And what I'm trying to recall is, it seems that there might have been some representatives here from the various groups that work with these type authorities across the state. Do you remember what their position was on this?
They supported it at that time.
They liked it.
Yes, they did.
And two, the chairwoman's question about would this affect, that's a good question, because some of the authorities across the state were created before the rewrite of the 1983 Constitution. They're called constitutional authorities, and their status is sometimes been in limbo, and I'm not sure that this would or would not affect them. The other thing I'm not sure of is that if every time an authority has been created, they do adopt generally bylaws and sometimes local ordinances. And I'm trying to think of the retrospective nature of this as how it would affect those. I suspect it couldn't be in violation of state law, so it may very well do that, but that's a complicated question.
But would it affect them only if, say, for example, if someone moved off the board and they were getting ready to add someone to the board?
Well, it also, yes, I think that you're correct. It would only affect them when the next time they were going to do something. And I haven't read this language closely since last year, but we're basically putting into a place to remove a bad actor off, and there may already be an authority that has that kind of language locally, and this may supersede that, and theirs may be even stronger than this for all we know. It's an open question that I couldn't answer sitting here, but a fair question.
Okay.
14.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Burnow, for the legislation. I just had a question about the residency requirement in the bill on line 12. How are we defining residents?
Based on the bill, it says that paying ad valorem taxes on real or personal property within the county.
I'm not a lawyer, sometimes I don't always understand. So I see that as an or, residents or licensed business owners. So what would be considered a resident under this bill?
A resident would be someone that lives in the county.
Anybody that lives in the county?
Yes, I mean, if they're a resident.
Thank you.
12, Chairman Taylor.
I think this needs to be clarified, because you could actually have somebody that is a non-resident. They own a business, but they live in Wyoming, and they don't live and breathe in that community, and they would be making major decisions on a community that they don't actually live in. So I have a.
But if are you saying because they have but if their business is in the county?
That's fine. You have corporations all over the country, and they may, have a corporation here, but it may have an adverse effect to a community. I think you need to be a resident of the community to be on these boards that are making local decisions.
So are you saying that you would prefer that they be a resident,
A resident.
and they own the business?
It doesn't matter if they own a business or not. If they're a resident, is what I'm looking for. I think residents of the community should be ones making the decisions for the community, not someone that may be an absentee landlord. That's basically what it would be. You're opening this up to absentee landlords that would have a say in your community if they get put on an economic development board or whatever. That's just a concern that I have. I
Okay.
want people locally making these decisions. If we need to have legislative council review it, I would offer to put this on the table to let it be reviewed and come up with a final answer.
Okay.
But this is what it looks like to me.
Leader Trammell.
Mr. Chairman,
17 is on, but I don't know if you can get to it. It's not working either.
You want to use mine, Bill?
that's all right. I'll project.
Enunciate.
Mr. Chairman, the way the legislation is set out with respect to the qualifications of a director, these are decisions of the local governing authority. So each local governing authority has the ability to decide whether or not they want residents or whether they want business owners who may not reside. And that's the appropriate choice for the local governing authority. So I think this bill strikes the proper balance. While some jurisdictions may not want out of county or out of city directors on these local governing authorities, other jurisdictions might. And that's a decision for the local governing authority, not one for the General Assembly, in my opinion.
Representative Bernal, would you be amenable to us taking a look at this based on Chair Lady Taylor's question, and then we will bring this back up for a vote at our next scheduled meeting?
Yes.
Get some of those answers so
I
that
will.
The committee can get more comfortable with that. Thank you
Okay.
very much. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
that. So we will put that on hold, and we will bring it back up after we get those questions answered.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Vice Chairman Jones to jump up here and chair the rest of, or the balance of the meeting based on this.
Good morning. No feedback. All right, we're going to go ahead and turn to the substitute to House Bill 757. And Chairman Blackman, are you prepared to present the bill?
I am. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a substitute 757 LC 28953-4S. And there are three components to this bill. I will, again, go through each of the components. And Chairman Fleming has been gracious enough to assist with a couple of these. So if I get off, please correct me there. The first thing that this does is this actually codifies authority that is already historically and by precedent given to the Secretary of State by which to set qualifying for special elections, and additionally on the local side to the elections superintendent. And then as far as registration is concerned regarding a general primary or special election, this would allow registration beyond the actual election, so that someone that did not vote in the general primary or special could vote in the runoff election. And lastly, in certain instances, the bill would run a special primary concurrent with a general primary, and it is it has been crafted in such a way that it would do so without any additional cost to the taxpayer and eliminate what I think has been called a jungle or melee, to use, I think, the correct pronunciation, primary. And that is the essential parts of the bill. Be happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman, as best I can.
Thank you, Chairman Blackman. I want to recognize Representative Turner.
Thank you, Chairman. Are there any candidates excluded from running for office in the current system?
I'm sorry?
Are there any candidates excluded from running for office under the current system? Are we preventing somebody from having an opportunity to put their name on the ballot before this change will become effective?
I think what you're asking me is to interpret what the law says now.
I mean,
I would need a lot of time to research that before I could give you an answer. Legislative counsel may be able to.
Okay. Are any voters prevented from voting for their preferred candidate in the current system?
Well, likewise, I'm not sure that I would not be able to go through the entire elections code section to be able to answer what you're asking me. Maybe a question for somebody else.
Isn't it true that if somebody wants to challenge a sitting incumbent in this special election process that we have today, that there's nothing preventing them from putting their name on the ballot?
I'm sure the gentleman knows of what he speaks.
And therefore, isn't it true that any voter can vote for their preferred candidate under the current system?
I don't see anything wrong with what you're saying, or no, sir.
Okay. Yesterday, the Speaker issued a statement about this piece of legislation saying the underlying principle of this legislation is a fair, comparable playing field for all those seeking elected office. Does this bill change the rules for all elections or just some?
Well, I think what we're trying to do with regards to this section of the bill is you have things that come up in it's not necessarily happens all the time. It's a unique circumstance, and so yes, this would capture just very unique circumstances. And again, it is designed such that we would avoid any additional cost to the taxpayer. And so it is carved in a special way, and that's the intent. And we are most absolutely certain to have an additional cost with a runoff if we do have a jungle or melee primaries versus a normal primary. Now, we are laying this over the top of a general primary that each and every one of us have to operate in, and that's the way this would operate with certain offices.
So isn't it true that you and I both share this trait in common, that we were elected in special elections?
Yes, sir.
Isn't it true that you were elected during a special election outside of session and I was elected during session?
Well, I'm not, I know about my own.
So does this bill affect us? Would it have affected us had it been in place? Would we have faced a primary special election prior to our own special elections?
I think that's a fair discussion. I think that's certainly a bill that I would recommend that you entertain, and I think that's worthy of putting forward. Yes, sir.
But I don't like this bill. Why would I do that?
Well, I think it's good policy. Once again, I think that it is good policy to give the parties who are an integral part of the election process an opportunity to weigh in a primary when the situation is available to them.
So if you would indulge me, line 138, such partisan office is being filled on, these are the conditions for this bill to take effect. So maybe I'm answering my own question here. About whether or not this is affecting all elections or just some. This is very specific language. Such partisan office is being filled on a temporary basis by appointment. So isn't it true that this wouldn't affect all elections?
Never intimated that it would.
Okay, I just want to be very clear because I didn't hear a clear answer there. So I just want to be very clear, and so it's on the record. When the speaker says that the underlying principle of this legislation is fair, comparable playing field for all those seeking elected office, that's simply not the case. It's factually not true that this affects all elections. It doesn't affect state representatives like us. It doesn't affect any other office except for those that would be a vacancy appointed by the governor. Is that correct?
I think it would be all elections, and then, of course, certain special elections under certain circumstances.
If that's the case, what is the need for line 138?
I think when you're talking about appointments, Mr. Representative, that you're talking about an opportunity that an appointment where you have not given the voters an opportunity to weigh in. And so I think that's what that line speaks to, and it does use the term partisan, so yes, in a partisan situation. So you wouldn't run a primary in the event that you did not have a partisan election.
So, but appointments in this case specifically, because this is aiming for just one type of the U.S. Senate race, and we're trying to get this done before the fall election. And in that particular case, the voters do have, isn't it true that the voters do have an opportunity to go to the ballot and cast their vote in November?
I think that we are still very early on in the process. So again, qualifying has not even been set. I would submit to you that based on that fact that, we have an opportunity to align this with all the other elections that are going on this year. I would prefer to speak to policy. I mean, I think, again, we had this conversation yesterday. You can choose what prism you want to look at this through, whether it be personality or politics. But if you look at this from a policy standpoint, is this good policy? Is it going to affect the taxpayer? Or are we just going to add a line on the ballot and the ink costs to do that? So we're already running elections. We're already having them this year. I think this speaks to that. And so, best answer I can give you, sir.
Thank you for letting me subject you to my line of questioning. First and foremost, I always appreciate your professionalism. I just continue to have concerns around the motivations for this. And I disagree with you, frankly, about the race already being underway. That firing pistols was fired many months ago when the outgoing senator decided to resign. And we wish him well and thank him for his service. But that's when the race started for this particular spot. And for us to change the rules in the middle of the race is an interesting thing that I think has to be examined through a political lens. I don't think we have a choice there. And the policy might be a good one if it weren't being done in the middle of a race that had already kicked off.
You're correct. We disagree on that.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, the middle would, I would say, I don't know how we could consider anything middle when we don't even have a qualifying date set. But yes, sir. Thank you.
Recognize Chairman Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Blackman, I pressed my button to answer one of those questions that got asked you. I don't think this keeps anybody from running. I think anybody that wants to can put their name on the ballot. And then, however, Representative Oliver asked me a question sitting next to me, and I didn't know the answer to it, and this might be one for Letch Council. Now, when we have primaries in Georgia, you get on the primary ballot one of two ways. If you're a Republican or a Democrat, our parties host primary contest. And I don't know if the Libertarians do that or not, but if you run as an independent or as a constitutionalist or a Green Party or maybe Libertarian, law provides a process to go through to be nominated possibly by a convention, and then you have to get a certain amount of signatures. Line 136 F says notwithstanding any other provision of law to the contrary. So I guess my question for Legislative Council would be, if we don't have provisions here to provide for those third-party and independent candidates to get access to the ballot, would we then be opening up the ballot to anyone who wanted to run as a constitutionalist or Green Party or independent or libertarian, it may be that the other provisions of the law answer that, but I'm wondering, because we're making this particular provision this way, would we be eliminating all the rules that we have set up, thus, rather than narrowing the ballot in November to just maybe 2 people, you open it up possibly to 12? I'm just curious.
It may very well. I would tell you that with my conversations with Ledge Council, and they're happy to weigh in, that when you reference what you're speaking to, 45-5-3 is a particular point of reference. When you start defining some of the things within this bill, I think Ledge Council could be more specific regarding that, Chairman Fleming. But appreciate the question, and certainly would yield to them if they have any additional remarks.
Stuart?
I don't know if I have any additional remarks this time. I think that's a good question that you've raised. I think that it is written, does currently allow for those other laws to stay in effect regarding those smaller parties.
And that's the understanding that I received from Jeff when we spoke at Legislative Council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Fleming. Are there any other questions? At this time, Chairman Blackman, would you like to make any closing comments?
I do not. Once again, I think that for each of us, we have to decide how we want to look at any piece of legislation. We are lawmakers. I mean, that is what we do. We change the laws. We change the rules. I think that several things have been brought up that would lead me to just say that I think what we're trying to do is if you trust the primary process, if you trust the voters, and you want to give them a maximum opportunity to weigh in as members of parties that are an integral part of our election process, that I would ask you to vote in favor of this bill.
Thank you, Chairman Blackman. Just for clarification, Representative Turner, do you have a question, or did you accidentally hit that button?
No, there's going to be additional discussion.
Yes. Yep. Okay.
Appropriate time, sir.
I would appreciate that. Thank you. At this time, I'll entertain a motion.
Yes, sir.
Chairman Powell.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. The Subcommittee on Elections has passed House Bill 757 back to the full committee with a due pass recommendation as a committee substitute, and I so move.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Was that leader? Thank you. Is there any discussion? Representative Turner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to point out, as we take this vote, the comment was just made in Chairman Blackman's closing that if you trust the voters, let's give them a maximum opportunity. And I want to iterate, my line of questioning was to highlight the fact that anybody can still put their name on a ballot. Anybody can still vote for their preferred candidate. And there is no diminished voice of the people in this, in the current system. What you are doing is interjecting at a very sensitive time a great deal of inter-party squabbling and instability into our election system. And that's going to have ripple effects for us in our own body specifically. There are going to be a lot of hard choices we're going to need to make because of the different sides lining up on this issue. Obviously, for those who don't know, the governor has issued a veto threat on this particular legislation when it has as a substitute, but not for the original piece of legislation. And I think every member should consider that as we move forward. And I would just ask, civilly as possible, don't interject inter-party squabbling into a process that was established and decisions have been made around, and planning has been made. If anybody wants to run, they're free to run. They can do that. If anybody wants to vote for their preferred candidate over another, they're still free to do that. But let's not change the rules in the middle of the race.
Thank you, Representative Turner. The chair will recognize Chairman Blackman.
Just as part of discussion, there are 36 states that when U.S. Senate seat is vacated are filled by gubernatorial appointment. Of those 36, 21 have a partisan primary. Nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Blackman. At this time, excuse me. Chairman Taylor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just as a quick note, it does appear and feel like it's one particular election. We need to recognize that we also have an insurance commissioner that is appointed, and any time that could be open for election. So it's not just one. It happens more often than you think when there is an appointment made. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Taylor. Seeing no other buttons pushed, not looking for discussion, I'm going to go ahead and bring this to a vote. And for clarity, we are voting on LC 289534S. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Bill passes on to rules. I'll hand the chairmanship back to Chairman Blackman.
Thank you once again, everybody, this morning. I know we've run long, so I'll be brief, but look forward to our next meeting next week. And please see me if you have any questions. Without objection, the meeting stands adjourned.